Okay. Hello everybody. Welcome to the Humanities Center for the start of another one of our semester-long series where we approach from a broad range of disciplinary angles a specific chosen theme. Now, a lot of you here will recall that in our last 3 years here, we undertook a very wide-ranging exploration of what we termed natural landscapes and human meaning. And in that series, we selected each semester one distinctive landscape, the ocean, the desert, the forest, the frozen realms, the mountain, and then the city, and investigated each one of those from a variety of perspectives and a range of disciplines. The trajectory of that series took us from wild and sublime places to, ultimately, something much more familiar to human beings, the thoroughly human-derived world of the city. It is a natural extension of that series, therefore, to arrive now at something that is still further connected with the human and the familiar, that most private of places, the home. So that is our theme this semester, the idea of home, what it means. And as with the previous landscape series, we will marshal a range of diverse ways in which home can be considered. We will hear the reflections of artists, humanists, architects arriving just on time, and scientists. And the topics considered will include the history of homes, non-human homes, the uncanny, migration, and many other things. We'll kick things off today in our usual fashion with introductory thoughts from myself and today's very special guest, Dr. Michael Mayer, about whom I'll say more later. After we've offered our thoughts, we'll have a little Q&A session, and it's always very lovely to hear the thoughts and reflections of all of you here. And then after that has concluded, I invite you to stay with us for our traditional opening reception. That should be very nice. And this reception serves today to celebrate two things. Firstly, we will raise a glass to the start of this series and more broadly, the start of Humanities Center fall programming, which is spelled out in glorious detail in our new and visually stunning calendar of events. There are lots of them over there. If you haven't got one already, do grab one and familiarize yourselves with what's going on this semester. It's a pretty packed program. So that's the first thing we're celebrating. The second thing that we are doing today is we're marking the release of our new publication about the Natural Landscape series. And this is the first that anyone's ever seen it, because I've just pulled it out of a box. Copies of this will be available. It's beautifully illustrated, and it marks 3 years of programming on the natural landscape theme. It really is a beautifully produced book, and I want to thank here those people most centrally involved in its production. Leah Roschke, Julie Dunn, and from within the beating heart of the Humanities Center itself, Derek Cartwright and Lindy Veer. So this is available for anyone who wants one. Derek is also to be recognized here for curating another wave of extraordinary exhibitions this semester, the first of which, Spectral Presences, can be viewed during today's reception. Thank you, Derek. It's a superb, superb piece of work. And Lindy Veer, Lindy is as ever to be thanked for pulling together so much of our programming in her role as the Assistant Director of the Humanities Center and making it flow smoothly. It is fair to say that nothing would really happen here without her. It would be a mess. Other words of gratitude are appropriate. at the start of the semester. I'd like to thank all of the speakers in this series who have given their time and expertise so very graciously. There are many of you here. Thank you in advance for what you're going to offer. Magdalene McRae, our coordinator, has worked tirelessly in support of our events and operations. We also have a new film assistant, Cherry Diamzon, who's doing wonderful work for us already. Our element chairs, including Susie Babka, Catherine Statler, and Darby Vickers, are with great vision and efficiency, making all of the component parts of the centre's activities come together. And finally, there are my two extraordinary colleagues on the centre's steering committee, Ron Kaufman, who does so much and who has been with us from the very start, shaping the very character of the Humanities Center. Thanks, Ron. And, of course, Noel Norton, the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, whose love for the arts and the humanities has preserved their place at the heart of the University of San Diego and in the most difficult of times. So thank you all for all you've done. Okay, so as I was thinking about the theme of this series, there was one line that kept circling around my head. Home is where one starts from. This line comes from the final part of T.S. Eliot's poem East Coker, one of his 4 quartets. Here's Eliot, of course. The lines which precede it focus, appropriately enough also for today, on beginnings and new ventures, Eliot says. And so each venture is a new beginning, a raid on the inarticulate with shabby equipment always deteriorating in the general mess of imprecision of feeling, undisciplined squads of emotion. Now, we find here some of Eliot's characteristic themes concerning the shifting volatility of words. Looking back, I feel we encountered time and again in our landscape series the failures of this linguistic raid on the inarticulate. Those sublime landscapes, the desert, the ocean, and so on, seemed to nullify our words, to deny our very human quest for meaning. Edward Abbey, who was a sort of constant presence in our work on landscape, made this point very powerfully in his book, Desert Solitaire. It's a really great picture of Ed Abbey. And Abbey says, under the desert sun, in that dogmatic clarity, the fables of theology and classical philosophy dissolve like mist. The air is clean, the rock cuts cruelly into flesh. Shatter the rock, and the odor of flint rises to your nostrils, bitter and sharp. Whirlwinds dance across the salt flats, a pillar of dust by day. The thorn bush breaks into flame at night. What does it mean? It means nothing. It is as it is and has no need for meaning. The desert lies beneath and soars beyond any possible human qualification. Therefore, sublime. This is gorgeous, I think. And here, Abbey arrived at a conception of the sublime as that of something ineffable, something beyond speech or beyond language. These are the problems that we encounter when we're approaching something very non-human, in this case, a desert. Now, such problems of meaning should probably be less insuperable when we encounter the world of the human, the city, say, or indeed the home. But even here, there are still problems. At the very least, there are ambiguities to address. So with Eliot, if home is where one starts from, one may want to start with a definition of home. It's a word we use very commonly, but what is it? As always, we should go to the Oxford English Dictionary, which gives us this: the place where a person or animal dwells. It's very nice and simple. It's then divided into a number of subsidiary definitions, including, and this is a whole, if you go to the OED about this, it is a lengthy series of definitions about home, just including a smattering of them here. A collection of dwellings, a village, a town, a dwelling place, a person's house or abode, the fixed residence of a family or household, the seat of domestic life and interests. Again, a refuge, a sanctuary, a place or region to which one naturally belongs or where one feels at ease. That's a thing that's going to pop up again, feeling at ease as we go through this semester. A person's own country or native land, also the country of one's ancestors. And then we have the normal resting place or abode of an animal, a nesting site or structure. Now, this list of definitions is a useful guide to the range of things we'll be reflecting on this semester. It may also reveal a number of tensions in the idea of home. Now, we may tend to think of our home as one thing, but we see that, even for a single individual, it may refer to distinct things that may not occupy one place. In my own experience, for example, I'm rather confused about what home refers to. My fixed residence is in the Cortez Hill neighborhood of San Diego. Indeed, that is the residence that I've lived in for the longest period of my life. But my own country or native land is England. God bless it.
God save the Queen.
And thank you. And I cannot simultaneously be at home there and at home in my long familiar residence in San Diego. This is strange. What does home refer to here? Indeed, there's a moment in Ian Thompson's fascinating book about Jamaica called The Dead Yard. I recommend reading The Dead Yard. It's a wonderful book. In which an interviewee, one of Thompson's interviewees, a Jamaican man dividing his time between Kingston and London, this interviewee says this when asked what he thinks of now as home. Is London your home? Is Kingston your home? And he says, in a very moving way, I think, home is always somewhere else. And this captures an aspect of the immigrant experience, of course. I'm not infrequently asked whether I'm going home for summer, for example. And presumably people mean, are you going to England? When I'm in England, ostensibly at home, people there will ask me when I'm returning home. To California, they mean. So it's always somewhere else. Home is always the place you are not. Of course, it doesn't have to be like that, but this shows a certain kind of strange tension in that. So, one thing to draw from this OED list is that the word home has varying reference. And so the question, are you going home, or the statement, I am going home, will mean different things depending on the context of utterance. Whether it's the end of a party, as someone might say, you should probably be going home. And then we know what that kind of means. Or if it's the end of the semester, I'm going home to Fresno for Christmas or something. or anything else. And then when we see photographs of our lovely blue planet taken from space, it's not an unnatural response to think of Earth in its entirety as our home, as our common home, perhaps. So if we return now to Eliot's line, home is where one starts from, we may think about the layers of meaning this possesses. Maybe we'll think about the beginning of a voyage. And here we might bring to mind the activity of packing a bag or a suitcase and plotting out a journey from that home, that spot on a map, heading out to some novel destination. You start from home and you forage out, you push out to somewhere else. Alternatively, the sentiment might evoke the spirit of something like the old phrase, charity begins at home, meaning that you should get your own things in order before trying to organize other people's lives or seeking to restructure society in some grand and sweeping fashion. A contemporary reading of this sentiment is found in a chapter on home in Justin Tosey's and Brandon Warmke's recent book, Why It's Okay to Mind Your Own Business. Which I think is kind of an interesting book. Thank you, Turner, for lending me this. This includes a sustained defense of the moral value of creating a good home, as opposed to grander ideas of the moral life as consisting of changing the world, addressing the world's urgent problems, and so on and so forth. The account given by Tosey and Warmke is multifaceted. They emphasize the role of the home as being the natural place to show and to develop the virtue of hospitality or attentive welcoming. Secondly, a peaceful home will operate as a kind of refuge, a refuge from the stresses of work and from the stresses of public and political life. Growing up in such a calm and peaceful home, a loving home, will also raise the chances of that home's inhabitants becoming well-adjusted, responsible, and caring individuals. In other words, it all largely starts from home. The importance of home, therefore, and of attending to it, taking care of it, is incomparable. A third layer of meaning focuses on that very matter of the home's crucial role in shaping our characters and personalities. In that spirit, the celebrated psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott titled one of his books, Home is Where We Start From, clearly a reference to Eliot. Winnicott's a really significant figure in post-Freudian psychoanalysis, and his work is really remarkable. The words he uses for that title are utilized by him to illustrate two familiar psychoanalytic ideas. Firstly, that it is home consisting of the family unit and the conditions of home life. It's home that lays down the foundation of a person's mental life. And secondly, Winnicott is suggesting that if we want to understand a person, particularly when that person's behavior is strange or self-destructive, say, we should try to establish what their home life was like, how their parents and siblings behaved towards them, and so on. Here, starting from has a nice twofold meaning. Home is where one starts from as a person. It's where the voyage of life commences. And it is where the process of understanding a person starts from too. I want us to pause for a moment over the cover of Winnicott's book. This shows the archetypal child's drawing of a house as a kind of friendly home. So friendly that it seems to have its own welcoming face. This is ubiquitous, of course. I found this little example. It was very sweet. accompanying a song that my wife was listening to on Spotify. I have no idea what the song was, but it's very lovely, and it gives that idea of the home. And it's also very sort of cute and friendly. Of course, the fact that we almost instinctively project a face onto a house's features does not mean that the face will always have a smiling countenance. In the 1979 movie, The Amityville Horror, the house's face itself exudes a kind of threatening terror. And in that movie, if you've seen it, or if you remember it, the house, it becomes a kind of character in the whole thing. Here we touch upon that interesting connection frequently drawn between the house and the human body. This is outlined very nicely by another figure who's familiar from our landscape series, the geographer Yu-Fu Tuan, in his ruminations on a house, just like a human being, having public-facing parts and more private interior parts. He says, this is a very lengthy passage, but I find it kind of useful. He's specifically talking about the ranch house. And at the front is the living room. Its windows, one on either side of the door, are eyes that survey the front lawn and beyond. The living room is social space. It is where one entertains. At night, one pulls down the blinds, shutting the eyes, and withdraws to the back of the house, made up of the bedroom, toilet, and kitchen, all of which cater to one's biological needs. Every night, one takes out the garbage that has accumulated in the kitchen bins, just as every night one sits on the toilet to be rid of the body's wastes. I think about this a lot. You bring in your shopping, which is like eating a load of stuff, and then you take out the trash, which is the sort of the other end of the process. At the front of the house are the immaculate lawn and the flower garden. It is for show and is unfenced. At the back of the house is a vegetable plot, a swing for the children, and a place for barbecuing and informal family gatherings. The backyard, being private space, is fenced in, protected from probing eyes. This is very interesting stuff, I think. Now, it would be wrong, of course, to think that people's homes are uniformly of this type. Many of us, myself included, live in high-density accommodation, a building containing a large number of residential units, apartments, or condominiums. These look nothing like the archetypal child's drawing of home, and the layers and the extent of privacy will here be altered, modified, perhaps even compromised by the rules and regulations imposed and enforced by homeowners associations and the like, the bane of my life. The fact that there are so many people living in close proximity with each other increases the likelihood of being disturbed by others, even when one is ostensibly at home. Now, it's this set of themes that forms the backdrop to a book that we had the opportunity, even the privilege, to hear about last semester, thanks to Professor Lisa Smith. That book is J.G. Ballard's great novel, High Rise. And if you haven't read High Rise, the night is young. This is a book with a narrative of a violent civil war breaking out in a residential skyscraper. Ballard's perception of the stresses and strains and sheer weirdness of life in a high-rise building is remarkable. A few sort of fragmented sentences here. The condominium is characterized by Ballard as an overpriced cell slotted almost at random into the cliff face of an apartment building. That is wonderful. It's more of a, you don't, it's like a house. You live in a drawer, in a chest of drawers, high up. The inhabitant he's talking about here feels that he was living in the gondola of a Ferris wheel permanently suspended 300 feet above the ground. With all these people sharing vertical space, Ballard says, the high-rise offers more than enough opportunities for violence and confrontation, almost living on top of each other. The architectural nervous breakdown of a high-rise is reflected also, he thinks, in what a modern city skyline looks like, with all those towering buildings of different heights and different sizes, resembling, he says, the disturbed encephalograph of an unresolved mental crisis. It's one of the greatest sentences I've read in a novel, and it has permanently changed the way I think about the skylines of major American cities. I drive home from work on the 5 going south, and San Diego rises above me. The disturbed encephalograph of an unresolved mental crisis. It's wonderful stuff. Anyway, I largely raise this point about the high-rise simply to indicate the range of things that might be called home. I also just always like to have a picture of J.G. Ballard at some point in a semester. Over the course of this semester, our speakers will dive more deeply into that variety of homes, the different places where people reside. In closing, I'll just return to Eliot's poem and to its idea that home is where we start from. Here are the relevant lines. Home is where one starts from. As we grow older, the world becomes stranger, the pattern more complicated of dead and living. Not the intense moment isolated with no before and after, but a lifetime burning in every moment. And not the lifetime of one man only, but of old stones that cannot be deciphered. Without offering anything like an exhaustive reading of these deeply complex lines, for our purposes here, we might say this. In our lives, we start from the simplicity of our homes, where things make sense. As we move beyond the familiarity of the home, and as we become older, the world becomes stranger, harder to understand, and at times even indecipherable. The process of understanding things will in part consist in understanding a tradition and the thoughts and ideas and lives of those who came before us, generation upon generation, time out of mind. The lifetime burning in every moment is that continuity of life of which we are a fleeting and ephemeral part. And this seems to me to be an illuminating way to think about education, and indeed about the themes we address here in the Humanities Center. And the latest of those themes, as you already know, is the theme of home. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the first special guest, a very special guest, in this Idea of Home series, Dr. Michael Mayer. Dr. Mayer joined the USD faculty in 1994 and is professor of biology. He received his PhD in botany from Washington State University, and his research focuses on plant systematics. This focus on plant diversity involves deciphering the evolutionary relationships among plants and then using these patterns to infer the processes by which plants evolve, speciate, and produce new lineages. Among the distinct research projects undertaken in Dr. Mayer's lab, we can note investigations into the phylogeny of the cholla cactus species of the local Anza-Borrego Desert, the diversification of Northern California catchfly flowers, and inquiries involving the local species summer holly and deerweed. Dr. Mayer has collaborated with researchers at San Diego State University and the Natural History Museum in Balboa Park, and for over 20 years he has been the main custodian of the USD Kumeyaay Garden. Please welcome to the Humanities Center on this very special day, Dr. Mike Mayer.
Well, thanks for coming. Thanks for that introduction, Brian, and thanks once again for an invitation to participate in one of the Humanities Center series. Home, being asked to take this position in the series, it was, I think it's really quite an honor, and I have to say, I can't think of a topic in which more of the disciplines of our campus could actually participate like on a blank canvas, you know. There's just something for everybody in this topic. So I'm excited to see what happens this semester. And I'm going to try to tread lightly on topics I think other people will address. We'll see how that goes. So my plan today is to take a biological perspective at home, what it is, and why do homes exist, and how is this relationship formed. So the home, in modern English, meaning since the 17th century, the meaning of the word home has expanded beyond referring to a house, domicile, or any other physical structure that provides shelter. Home is now, I would argue, a complicated, somewhat abstract concept. It's not actually just a house, right? It transcends the physical. Home is where the heart is. You're my home. This house is not a home. Home is a state of mind, a feeling. So, interestingly, though, there's a parallel here with natural history. This expanded view of what home means actually works well with patterns we see in nature. Yes, functionally, home is a place of safety, of comfort, where one has access to resources for survival and reproduction, which answers partly why we have homes, right? And so for many organisms, including humans, home is a static, physical place, like a roost, lair, den, cavity, burrow, house, camp, etc. But for some animals, including humans, the experience of home is in more abstract terms, as I mentioned. Home is wherever their mate is, their family, their circle of friends, their pack, their community or their comrades. Non-human animals can live in herds, flocks, troops, prides, or schools. They migrate, they can act as a nomadic clan. So their home is their group. It still is a place of safety and support. It's just wherever the rest of their group is. And of course, this tendency exists because it helps optimize survival and chance for reproduction. And for many animals, home is a spot where they never leave, right? Or if you leave, it's worth returning to day after day, month after month, season after season, year after year, generation after generation. Nomadic or sedentary creatures all rely on their version of home to avoid extinction. Instincts become hardwired into their behaviors to help them find or remember their home. Why mess with what works? As for humans, most of our nomadic and hunter-gatherer ancestors eventually transitioned towards agriculture, arguably as a way to expend less energy in the pursuit of food and experience more comfort in more permanent dwellings among extended family. But there are many other possible reasons for this transition, as it happened independently in multiple locations at multiple times across the globe: Central and South America, North Africa, Asia, the Middle East. So as the sedentary human population grew and cities developed, housing traditions became more formalized, And the word home became less like the place, or I should say, and the home became less like the place where an extended family works collaboratively for the survival of the lineage. There are lots of factors at play in this trend, space, tradition, cost, etc. But it led to a system that focused on homes just big enough for the nuclear family, isolating it from the extended family, like grandparents, traditionally, who care for the children and can share a lifetime of accumulated wisdom. So it really is kind of weird, this trend. Social primates, like humans, are not adapted for small homes. It forces us to become less social and perhaps maybe less human in that way. But this trend only accelerated and things got worse for this social primate. In the early 20th century, single-family home zoning was introduced into the suburbs of the US and then became a central feature of the American dream after World War II, providing homes that were miraculously affordable. Tragically, an original motivation for this zoning was actually racism, using zoning as a convenient mechanism to segregate neighborhoods by race. Levittown, Pennsylvania, this is late 40s, early 50s. One of the marvels of post-world 40s and 50s, it was a planned community, a model for modern suburbs, but with covenants that barred Black ownership. I have a feeling this topic might come up again this semester. We'll see. That little deviation, I'm just trying to point out that humans have kind of strayed from their ancestral home archetype into something that I don't think is quite as good in many ways. Well, however big or small our home, place attachment is built into our nature. We form emotional attachments to our home, our place of belonging, of comfort, of cherished memories. Our home becomes a source of emotional and psychological well-being. And for many species, this attachment is critical to their survival. So this attachment is important for humans and their relatives in the remainder of the animal kingdom. And now I want to think about why, how this attachment forms. We're going way back. I got to start at the beginning. The roots stretch back to before the origin of animals. All organisms have the ability to sense and respond to the environment. Single-cell organisms have sensory proteins that protrude from their outer membrane, from the outer membrane to gather information. These proteins span the outer membrane of the cell. And so they have an external portion that can bind to a chemical, which triggers a reaction in the protein that leads to some kind of signal being transferred to the inside, which then triggers a response by the cell, either to, hey, there's food nearby, or it's time to move to a better location, all sorts of things. So this developed in a way, obviously, for organisms to get information about their surroundings, get food, find safety, and the like. Let's see, where did I go? Evolution led to ever more sophisticated mechanisms for assessing the environment, and multicellularity allowed for the construction of specialized sensory organs. Senses that perceive light, sound, vibrations, chemicals in the water and the air, even magnetic fields help organisms find food, avoid predators, and locate a home. Memory formation and memory retrieval were then key to remembering safe places to return to, or profitable places to return to. Genetic mutations that improve the acuity of any of these senses or their organs, in turn improve survival and reproduction of organisms with the new traits, transforming populations over time. Thanks, natural selection. So, creating, finding, and remembering home is learned or instinctual for most animals, and can involve the integration of information from multiple senses. Across the diversity of animals, we see a remarkable diversity of senses, as well as different senses rising or falling in prominence depending to the needs and the direction that evolution has taken a particular lineage. In addition to our sight, sound, or sight, hearing, and smell, and touch, and taste, animals can sense infrared radiation, can sense magnetic fields, like migratory birds. Infrared radiation, I should mention, that can be sensed by snakes and other reptiles. They can sense ultraviolet light, like pollinating animals among the insects. They can sense electric fields, like sharks and rays and things like platypus. This is the star-nosed mole, in case you're wondering about this. Outrageously sensitive to touch, tactile senses. They're functionally blind, so they have changed the senses to which they rely on. And of course, let's not forget the bat and the echolocation they use to identify prey and structures when there is no light available. Well, so that's the other animals. I'm going to focus on humans for the rest of my presentation. And of course, in humans, we have the sort of the plain Jane major senses of sight, hearing, taste, touch, olfaction, all of which we can use in our recognition of home. So I'm going to pull it kind of back to home, hopefully. So, yeah, we can see our home, right? Sometimes we use hearing to identify our home and remember it. We can smell our home, yeah, in various ways. We can touch our home affectionately, or just to find it in the dark, right? We can taste our home. Now, little side story here. I found out ChatGPT has a problem if you ask it to show a genderless blue person licking a small home. It comes back with really a very judgmental statement. Say, this is sensitive business. So gave me an option. And so I chose the option of having my genderless blue person be licking a gingerbread house. ChatGPT is okay with that. Nevertheless, it does use the sense of taste for it. So that's yeah, it served my purpose. Okay, so, among these senses, of course, sight gets the credit, most of the credit, in memory and recognition of home. For obvious reasons, we are visually oriented creatures, and about 50% of our brain is dedicated to processing visual information. It's pretty staggering that way. But here you go. Here's the curve of the talk. I'm going to focus on the sense of smell. And that is where we're going. We're going to be thinking about this for a while now. The olfactory sense is actually the most ancient of the five senses, really. Being an evolutionary descendant of the earliest receptors on the external membrane of those single-cell organisms that allow them to detect and identify chemicals in the environment. We have functionally similar receptors called olfactory receptors, or various forms of chemoreceptors, that are embedded in the membrane of neurons in the epithelium of the roof of our sinus. So here are the olfactory receptors. This is the sinus cavity. And you can see these neurons have the ability to bind with chemicals. When they bind with chemicals, because it's already part of a neuron, it transmits a signal that is then gathered in the olfactory bulb. Olfactory sense is really rather different than the other senses. The other senses take their information from the nerves that bring that information and process it in the thalamus. Thalamus is a region in the center of the brain. It's the main processing center and relay station of this sensory information. And from there, it farms out the information to the cortical regions of the brain for further analysis and processing. But olfaction is the only one of the senses that has neural connections directly from that olfactory bulb to regions of the brain governing emotional response and the creation of and retrieval of memories. Creation of emotional response, also creating emotional memories here, is the amygdala. The olfactory cortex identifies smell and it consolidates it with memories of other senses. The hippocampus creates and retrieves memories and also creates long-term memories and synthesizes it with the other impulses. There's a lot of feedback between these regions. The point is that the olfactory bulb plugs directly into the brain. There is no prior processing of this information, which I think is going to feed into my thesis in a little bit. The nose, a little more background here. The nose has 10 million olfactory receptors and can distinguish 10 trillion scents. Believe me, I'm sure somebody counted them, right? 10 trillion different scents, which I believe is reflection of the fact that with so many olfactory receptors, multiple receptors can be triggered simultaneously, creating a sort of chemical fingerprint for a fragrance that is unique and that can be created as a memory. Okay? Now, in context, some of the superstar sniffers in the animal world consists of bears, which are phenomenally sensitive. I think, though, the top at this point in my research is bloodhounds, which we have 10 million olfactory receptors. They have 300 million olfactory receptors. So they could smell a trail that goes on for 20 miles. 2 weeks later, I mean, it's just crazy. So anyway, olfaction is really important to us and to other animals. So recognition and memory of home is a multi-sensory process. And those memories can be linked pretty directly to emotion without our permission at all. And no sense generates information that can be linked to memory and emotion more directly than the olfactory sense. It is certainly an simplification, but as Dawn Goodwin states here, and she is, I love this, an olfactive branding company president. Smell and emotion are stored as one memory. It almost feels that way sometimes. The olfactory system is precocious in human development. So it might be more important than we think, or at least some of us think. Functionally, it is working in the womb within just a couple of months of conception. It's capable of perceiving odors in the amniotic fluid, and as newborns, our olfactory sense is completely developed and functional. In fact, it takes dominance, prominence over sight well into young childhood. And of course, it's absolutely essential for key mother-baby bonding functions. It's been shown that these babies are early on much more reliant on their nose than their eyes. And I'm wondering if this suggests why our most intense place attachment is to our childhood home. So the direct connection between smell and memory also explains why certain scents have the ability to instantly and involuntarily retrieve certain memories as well as emotions. This all makes me suspect that there is an underappreciated role of our nose in forming the visceral emotional attachment we have to our home. And throw a little Proust in here. And suddenly the memory revealed itself. The taste was that of a little piece of Madeleine, which my Aunt Leonie used to give me, dipping it first in her own cup of tea or tisane. I think we can all relate with this kind of feeling that hits us out of the blue. At this point, you're probably thinking that I've hijacked the whole idea of this series, and indeed, I was thinking about renaming it The Aroma of Home, The Redolence of Home. I thought that didn't sound right. But getting back to the importance of sense of smell, folks have known about the emotional impact of sense long before corporate fragrance branders. Hollywood has periodically toyed with the gimmick of releasing specific scents during key scenes in a movie to elicit certain emotions or feelings, right? And especially in the 1960s, particularly the competing systems were Aromorama and Smell-O-Vision. They both released movies at this time, figuring out ways to pipe in and release fragrances into the air supply of the theater. Sometimes it didn't work very well. Sometimes the fragrances were clearly artificial and offensive. Sometimes the fragrances didn't clear out, so it became a muddle of all these fragrances all together. So it was a dismal failure. Didn't go very far until John Waters resurrected the idea for his movie Polyester in 1981, in which he distributed Aromorama scratch and sniff cards. You went into the movie, and then when you watched the movie, it flashed up as a number to scratch and sniff. And wait, don't spoil the surprise ahead of time. So, and as you can imagine, if you know anything about John Waters' work, most of them were foul or nasty. But, yeah. Anyway, pretty fun. But where was I? Oh, let's get back to the idea of home here. So I want us to think about our home, current or past. I would expect your feeling of home is a tangled package of memory and emotion. When we think of home, we often focus on the visual memories that we conjure up. But sounds and smells and tactile sensations are important too. But what I want to try now is asking you, if you close your eyes and put yourself back in that childhood home or a place that has special meaning to you, what do you smell? What odors perhaps bring you back to those places? Could be cooking or baking smells, perhaps pipe tobacco, perfume, old carpet, wood paneling. So do certain smells transport you to that place and time? And I'm curious, can anyone give me some sense from their past, their home? Dog. Yep, it was inevitable. I was going to say kitty litter. No. Noel.
Old books.
Books.
My Italian mom's spaghetti sauce.
Michelle.
Country home where you smell the woods being that brought me back to the country.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Allison.
Subway smells.
Subway smells. Okay, I'm going to get to environment soon. Yes. Yes.
Pine salt cleaner.
Pine salt cleaner. Does it bring a tear to your eye when you think about that? Anything else? Yeah.
Old athletic socks.
Wow, this is not quite as sentimental as I was thinking. Okay, but I expect that a lot of your feeling of home is not derived from the built landscape, but rather includes what you perceive when you step outside your house and into the other part of your home, which is the surrounding environment. Right. I want to think about home from an environmental perspective, your home habitat, this expanded idea of home. Personally, I've been always interested in the natural vegetation, where I am living. No surprise there, I know. But I need to know the names of the plants that are now my neighbors, and of course, I need to know what they smell like. But for all of us, environmental smells, including the smell of plants or subways, whether or not we know their names of the plants, they're all important triggers of our memories. And of course, not all the smells outside or inside are pleasant. So I want to think now and ask you about what you smell when you walk out your door. I'll start. For me, I grew up in LA. So if I'm walking outside, I'm thinking I'm smelling lawns right away. And if it's summer, I can smell the swimming pool. The air probably smells hot and dry and pungent and acrid because of the smog in the air. It was the 1970s, mind you, so not so great at that time. But if I go out to the hillsides, right, near our home, I get the California sage scrub, right? Pungent, sagey, so distinctive, great smell. And it's the same vegetation that's around USD. Has a lot of memories for me. When I moved to Humboldt County, very different. A cool, moist air. A lot of the conifer, redwood type smell. Mildew, often in the air. The smell of wet, living soil. And pulp mill. Anyone know what a pulp mill smells like? Yeah. There's a unique smell. And Eastern Washington, lilac shrubs. That's a good one. dry, resinous, ponderosa pine smell on a nice warm day. And ripening wheat. That's a really great smell. Anyway, how about you? Anyone got some smells from their home habitat? Looks like you're going to go for it. Ah.
Cut lawns. Cut lawns.
Cut lawn. Yes. Yeah. Good one.
Pine trees.
Pine trees.
I do winter, cold air,
Cold air. Yeah.
snow, that comes from.
That has a smell.
It does.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Rosemary.
Rosemary. Oh, love it. Yeah, I got that outside my house now. Yeah.
Lilac bushes,
Lilac bushes. From where?
grandparents. Grandparents, going to the grandparent home and there are two big lilac bushes for the other side of the
Oh,
porch.
nice. Where was this?
In a small town in Indiana, Old York, Indiana.
Excellent. Yeah. Well,
Manure. Because Cal Poly San Elizabeth, but it was an agricultural land and it blew all over town.
you drive through Riverside County, you know, although it's now mostly houses, less manure, more houses.
My house is a coffee roaster, and so just when the wind goes, just right, it smells a little bit like coffee and a little bit like chocolate. And for a minute, someone had told me that if you have random smells of chocolate in your brain, you should go to the doctor. And there was an entire week that I was asking all of my neighbors if they were also smelling it. But now that I know what it is, I don't need to go to the doctor.
Anyone else? Ah, Ron.
And during the winter, sometimes wood smoke,
Wood smoke.
fires in their fireplaces.
During the summer, dried pines.
Yes. That just fills the air and fills your nose.
The pepper tree in my front yard, I used to climb.
Uh-huh.
Never forget that.
Nice. Any weird old fragrance that goes way back or that you find triggers you for anything?
The smell of tennis ball
Excellent. Yeah. Oh.
Vegemite.
Vegemite. Does it remind you of home?
I smelled it on a train station in Norway, and I knew there was a strange.
Anything else?
Smell of brains frying. My grandmother was Belgian and she fried brains. I smell that on the way back. Strange thing.
But is it good on balance?
I do not enjoy it.
Oh.
It does take me there, yeah.
Gasoline, my dad works on scooters.
Oh, gasoline. My dad's garage, oil smell, he was a mechanic, yeah. Cigarettes.
I hated it as a child, and now I love the smell. And you hardly smell it anymore because you smell it from everywhere. I'm smoke-free now, but it always takes me back to my childhood.
I'm glad. It infuriates a lot of people, but, yeah. Anything else?
The lobby of my dad's office building.
That's neat. Okay. Well, in closing, preparing for this talk reinforces in me the idea that we are at the mercy of our senses, really. They are always doing their job relentlessly, with or without our permission, gathering information, while our brains are hard at work behind the scenes, sorting, relaying, compiling the information, and linking it with emotion as a package of memories, which are then ready to be called back up instantaneously and unbidden by a sight or a song or most poignantly, I think, a smell. No wonder that humans find their home, their family, or their refuge to be a mystical, transcendent place, rather, generating powerful emotions and providing inspiration for art, poetry, music, and prose, all attempting to capture or understand those profound feelings we have for home. So, thank you.